had a dozen cards and a piece of bubble gum that would last for like two chews. But these cards, when I'm looking at people selling these cards, not so much now. I know the market's kind of flattened out a little bit, but like I don't know how many times I had like a Guy Lafleur rookie card or Ken Dryden or any of those things, right? And we didn't collect them to hold on to them. We collected them to play in the
They
playground.
were gambling chips. That's what they
Oh
were.
yeah, it was crazy. And we would do the trades and stuff, but it was all about this game.
And
And
today kids are gambling Pokemon cards, I think. So yeah, it's
yeah,
times
exactly.
have
Or trying
changed.
to find them on their phone. Yeah, so I mean, the cards would get destroyed, and you were always trying to find out a better way to fold the card or bend the card to win the game. So the cards themselves were pieces of paper, and then you'd come home and you'd have like a big pile of cards one day, and then the next day you come home with two cards. So it was just this fun game that happened, and that's what we use the hockey cards for. So if I had taken those cards and tucked them away in a box somewhere, there probably would have been some really cool cards there, but
Yeah,
they were all destroyed.
I'm sure there was a couple of gems in there as well. And quick story, real quick. Like I've collected cards as well. In the early '90s, I would always, get whatever money I can get. Go to the store. Well, we go to the comic book store back in the days, and go there buy a box of, pro sets or OPGs or whatever. Then my friends and I, we trade whatever doubles or triples we have. And I kept a book, and it's somewhere at my parents' storage, and I remember looking at it, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm going through the collection, and I'm seeing like guys like Ulf Samuelsson and Bill Ranford. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I see, oh, look, a Luke Robitaille rookie card. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I should maybe hold on to that for the next 50 years. I'm glad I didn't gamble that one away. Sebastian, you had a question as well for our guest Rocco.
Yeah, so going back to that string of five cup victories, was there like a depth player that like won your heart in one of those years? Because this year, Corey Perry won the hearts of almost all Habs fans, and John Merrill did not. Was there like a depth player that was just like an absolute favorite during those years?
For me, for that, the biggest thing was Ken Dryden. I loved goalies, and he was awesome. Like just to watch him play, and and you look at the comparison to the equipment and the way goalies play now to back then. My mind just sees the pictures of him, like that would be the guy. Like I mean, we talk about the forwards and the goal scorers and all those guys, right? But for me, it was always Ken Dryden.
You're listening to Rocco Rosa joining us alongside Joshua, Scott, and Sebastian. Rocco, I mean, my father is about the same generation as you, and obviously he's raved on about Guy Lafleur. And coincidence is that his name is also Guy, so he was absolutely thrilled about that fun fact. I like to know, in your perspective. I mean, I've heard it a million times because it's what I grew up with. But for fans of a certain age, they might look at someone like me, and I'm not even 40 years old yet I was alive for two Stanley Cups. I mean, okay, I was only old enough to actually witness one properly, but guys like Scott, Sebastian, and Josh, like seeing the Stanley Cup finals last year was the closest thing that they've witnessed, like of the intensity and the wildness that is Montreal, like during what they actually call playoff fever. But my question to you is, as someone, you said it earlier, oh, we didn't see the cup this year. We'll just go next year. They'll probably get it then. How did you feel once, you know, guys like Robinson, Saval, Cournoyer, Lafleur, they all started leaving. And the next thing you know, the NHL started expanding. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, we're not winning, and we're not winning. Oh, and then '86 happened, and we had a young guy named Patrick Roy happen and everything. But then, when did you realize that hey, we can't win this one every year? And then, especially after '93, I mean, how do you feel as a Habs fan now? I mean, do you still have that same passion as you had for way back when, or is it just, what it is, what it is, and it's just TV entertainment from now on?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think it boils down to that. The Habs have always been on my heart, so it's always been the team. I mean, Josh remembers that we had painted one of our basement walls a like an
Bleu
ice
Blanc
rink.
Rouge.
Yeah, it looked like a giant ice rink with the Habs logos and stuff.
Nice.
It's just I've never like swayed away from it, and there has been teams, there's had been um,
You
runs
know,
from different teams that have done really well,
yeah.
and it's great. And I'm unlike some other like sorry, I would not say that word. Other fans, I just like watching the team win, right? And one of my passions is to have a Canadian team. I think everybody in this room would agree to bring the cup home soon.
Oh yeah.
Um, I'm not a person that says, well, if Montreal's not going to win, then I'm not going to watch or play anything else.
How do you feel about those kinds of fans?
Oh, I hate them.
I mean, we call them bandwagoners, but I mean, I've seen that often. Like, oh yeah, back in the day, we used to win all the time. Now they suck.
Yeah.
I don't care about them. So yeah, you hate them. You say?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got friends. I get friends that are true blue and white fans, and their thoughts are if Toronto can't win the cup, I would love a Canadian team to win as long as it's not Montreal. And I'm like really, like, come on, what do you like? There's and I guess it boils down to like their age and they're passionate about that team.
I mean, I have a confession to make. I don't mind if any Canadian team wins as long as it's not Toronto. So, but
it's just been so deep in me that it's always been Montreal, right? But I'm not gonna not watch or follow another team that is doing really well. When Montreal's out, I may not watch as many playoff games, but
I want to point out real quickly, like Scott and Sebastian, for example, have this incredible segment, as you know, called the Prospect Heroes. And these guys dig really deep into advanced analytics and statistics. And Scott admitted to me the other day that, he must have like about 58 tabs open on his internet browser when he's doing these segments. And Sebastian has, all these Excel documents, and they're so organized, and it's incredible. But I mean, guys, feel free to interject about this next question. I mean, how different was it way back when versus today, when the only source of news you had was the newspaper that was delivered to your door in the morning? You would have to get whatever newspaper you had at the time. You'd open it being like, all right, so last night, all right, Canadian scored, cool. And, okay, Lafleur scored another 3, that's 30 for the year and everything. And that was it. That piece of paper was the only source that you had. Today, you got like 17 million websites. I mean, does the technology today kind of kill that passion a little bit? Like a little bit, like radio killed the radio star, for example. But like, like how different was it, to live in that, in that past where paper, you had to rely 100% as to what the author wrote versus, all the sources you have today.
I think it's really formed me of what kind of fan I am today, for sure. Very little. I mean, we would try to get home and try to watch some news that would have like a 45-second sports blip on hockey, especially in the playoffs. There's obviously more information in the news. I really rarely would read the articles because it was so Toronto centered, because it was so close to Toronto.
So it didn't change
but
then.
exactly. But there was always the little spreadsheet in the paper that would have the players' names, games played, goals, assists, that sort of stuff. So we would look at that, and then we would briefly look at, especially in those 5 years, we would compare it to the Toronto little box and say, look at what Montreal is doing compared to this little box, right?
Yeah.
So how I look at things now, I really appreciate what, especially Josh, seeing him and watching what you guys do about the stats. I'm not about that. I like watching passionate people on the ice, and that's what it was about before. And I guess it went through me, like I was Larry Robinson with my stick, or I was Ken Dryden, right? Just watching players on the ice. The stats really didn't mean a lot to me at the time. So it never really followed me. Like, I'm not a guy that sits there and looks at all the stats and who's doing what and all that sort of stuff. I want to watch guys play passionately on the ice. That's what I want to see.
Absolutely.
The numbers are great and they're important, but not for me.
I'm going to ask a question to everyone on the panel, to Josh, Scott, and Sebastian, and I'd love to hear your answer. And this is a little impromptu, so you guys have no idea what I'm going to talk about. And then Rocco will ask you one final question to tie all this together. Let's start with Josh, because your dad is the star of the show right now. I mean, how cool is it to share hockey with your dad? Like, how amazing is it, when you're sitting with your dad and you're watching the game, and and I'm sure you've everyone has grown up, with maybe not just your dad, but your mother or any other relative and whatnot, and listening to them talk like, "Yeah, son, back in 1976, we never lost." Like Lafleur would score 19 goals with one hand behind his back, blindfolded while smoking a cigarette. So like, and then today, you guys are all old enough, in order to make some more, arguments about the game and everything. So I mean, like, you guys still have that same passion. You guys still love sitting down with your parents and maybe watching the game. Josh, let's start with you.
Yeah, I remember it's always been a big bonding thing, I feel, between me and my dad. The big one I remember was in 2010 when Montreal went on that great run to the Eastern Conference Finals. They beat Washington, who they weren't supposed to beat. They beat Pittsburgh. Yeah. And I remember staying up with my dad watching those games. And I think that was when it really kind of started hitting on me how much I did like watching hockey and how much interest I had in it. And it was sitting there in the basement, in our hockey rink basement, with all the Habs stuff around me, watching this incredible, miraculous comeback win against Washington and winning in Pittsburgh in Game 7. It was a great bonding experience. I'll never forget it.
I've managed to put it off for the longest time now, but for those of you not in the know, my father is Stu Cowan, who is one of the Gazette Sports, who is one of the main writers for the Montreal Gazette and has been main writer for the Montreal Gazette for quite a long time. So obviously growing up with a journalist as a father, and specifically a journalist who covers the Montreal Canadiens extensively and who all the players know, it was definitely a different experience watching games. I mean, a player would flub up and one or the other would say, "Oh, come on, you old fart, you got to make a better play than that," or something like that.
A little more expletive, right?
yeah, just being
bleep, 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 bleep.
Definitely, it was a bit more of I had an more analytical view towards the Canadiens growing up, because I definitely had somebody who had to have that viewpoint and who had to have these opinions on the players and who had to recap the games like that. And the thing I noticed in both the 2009 and this past playoff run was that when the Habs are doing well, none of that seems to matter anymore. And the analytical viewpoints and the criticism just kind of go out the window for the most part. And you can just kind of focus on enjoying the Canadiens during these amazing playoff runs. And that kind of reminds me a lot of how things used to be with the Canadiens back in the 70s, as Mr. Rocco was talking about, with them being, I think, like a parade every single season. So I definitely think that it was a really great bonding experience just to be able to do that. And it definitely inspired me to do the stuff that I'm doing today, kind of leading on my dad's legacy.
So it was a bit different for me. So my dad actually played hockey for like 12 years growing up, but he just hasn't watched hockey at all since then. Like he enjoyed playing it, but wasn't the sport that he enjoyed watching. So the only real big hockey memory I have with my dad was the golden goal at the Olympics in Vancouver. Like he watched that game with me. But apart from that, it was really like on my own that I discovered like my love for hockey. Yeah, because it's just like none of my friends watch hockey either. So like my like passion for hockey has just been like steadily increasing the last couple of years, like especially also that now with like this podcast and like being able to talk about it and doing a lot more research on my own. And it's just been like my hobby as well, just like for my own time. So it's a different road, but also like Scott was saying, like growing up that way helped him get to where like he is now with all of this. And it was the same thing for me, but just for the exact opposite reason of not having that hockey outlet and then searching for one instead.
Sebastian, we promise you we will get together and watch games together. Don't worry.
For sure.
You have friends in us.
I'm all alone.
Well, I guess I'll go at the same time. In my case, since I'm a little bit older,